All right, there are several factors. One is the 8.5% loan. When 235s first came out, it was an 8.5% loan.
This was in 1969.
Right. The other is divorces. Some can be attributable to poor mortgage credit risks. In other words, we took chances on people that we shouldn't. Well, one of the main factors, I think, is that people are very mobile and they move. And the mechanism here for buying a 235 home is simpler than selling it. First thing, FHA is going to make them repaint it and caulk the windows. Then they have to pay 6% for a real estate company. They have to eat maybe 3 or 4 points. So they end up having to have about $1,000 to get rid of the home.
So they move away.
Right. They don't have the $1,000 to get rid of the home.
And how do you expect to attract private money lenders into the subsidized market with this high risk?
The private lenders aren't taking any risk. We're the one taking the risk. They're fully covered.
Tone between Earth Day 1 and Earth Day of last April were just tremendously different, as those of you that covered them know. But I find that in addressing citizens groups, that the questions are better, the suggestions for action are better.
Now that you've taken this survey, when and to whom are you going to present it?
We will first present it to the Public Utility Supervisor, Tom Taylor, at his public hearing on September 22nd. This is the first time that a public hearing has been held prior to the City Council receiving Mr. Taylor's rate analysis. We will also present it to the City Council Utility Rate Study Committee, which was recently formed and is headed by Gary Weber.
There are Democrats and there are Democrats. The national standard bearer is Senator George McGovern, who is due in Dallas at 8:45 this evening to address a rally at the Fairmont Hotel. But the local standard bearers, people like Roy Orr and Earl Luna, won't be there. They say they weren't invited. Meanwhile, it's like a birthday party at McGovern headquarters. The storefront office out on Lemon Avenue has expanded a lot since the senator was just trying for the Democratic nomination. Now, instead of SMU students, people in the office tend to be more mature and more like political pros. And downtown at the Fairmont, activity is falling all over itself. There are stands to be set up, wires to be strung. The tension and excitement are so great, you'd think McGovern had won the presidency. Predictions on the crowd run everywhere from 500 to 7,500. Of course, that's half a dozen or so short of what it would be if local Democratic officials were to go to the rally. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News, on the move.
We invite all citizens of Dallas County to participate in this brief memorial service. We extend special invitations to the Jewish community, all athletes of this area, both professional and amateur, and all candidates and elected officials of Dallas County.
This council further urges the International Olympic Committee to continue with the Olympic Games, not only this year, but in the years to come, to prove to the nations of the world that no group of people, no matter how treacherous may be their intentions, can mar the peaceful pursuits of those nations that are determined that world peace shall become a way of life.
Opposition has filled the White House not with servants of the people, but with public relations experts on a scale this country has never known before in its history. And now to cover up their own failures, they are trying to discredit the National Democratic Party and its standard bearers as radicals. But what is right has always been branded as radicals by those who have a stake in preserving what is wrong in the status quo. And remember, in 1964, Lyndon Johnson was called a radical because he believed in a strong program of Social Security and a decent education for every young person in this country, and Lyndon Johnson won the election. And I want to say to those of you who are younger and remember only the years of war in recent years, that one of the things I have admired over the years about the late Sam Rayburn and about former President Johnson is that in spite of any differences they may have had with individual Democrats, they never ran away from the Democratic national ticket in a presidential election year. We know that our work is cut out for us. We're engaged against an opposition that is setting out seriously to raise a minimum of $45 million for their presidential campaign. And we desperately need the dollars of the ordinary men and women and young people and old people and working people, housewives and students, and all the citizens of this land who covet a better future for our country.
These 11 men were not soldiers. They were not terrorists, nor were they guerrillas. They were athletes, engaged in the noblest of efforts in behalf of brotherhood and international friendship. They were innocent people striving to cement better relations and to create a better atmosphere in which man could live.
For those who detest George McGovern, distrust Richard Nixon, or dislike American Party candidate Bob Schmitz, another man has joined the growing ranks of presidential choices. He's Dr. John Hospers, a California philosophy professor and candidate for the newly founded Libertarian Party.
We believe that big government is the main enemy of individual freedom. The history of the last 40 years, especially in this country, is the history of decision after decision being taken away from the individual and put into the hands of government, especially the government bureaucracy. That's the way it's going, so that if that continues, America will simply become a fascist dictatorship.
Tag a conservative or liberal label on this party and you'll have a hard time proving it. On one hand, libertarians oppose welfare and foreign aid. On the other hand, they support abortion and oppose the draft. Conservatively, libertarians want to abolish taxes, but in the liberal vein, they support total press freedom. This combination of revolutionary and reactionary ideas boils down to what the libertarians call an alternative for the voters in November. Martha McIntyre, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Here in Dallas County.
The nations of the world.
Coach Darrell Royal here at Texas will be the first to tell you that this version of the Texas Longhorns for 1972 lacks that long scoring threat that they have had in years past. Therefore, if success is to come to Texas University during this football season, it will have to come through concentration, through execution, and through great morale.
I believe our biggest lacking would be speed. We just simply don't have the speed in there to our offensive running backs that you need to have to make the big, long play. I think we're going to have to rely on execution and not busting assignments and great morale. These are the things we're going to have to work on to have a good offensive football team. I don't think we'll be near as explosive as we have been the last few years.
What about your defense?
I think we stand a chance of being as good defensively as we were last year. We didn't have anything really to write poems about defensively, but we were a good, solid defensive football team, and I think that's about the way I'd rate this coming in group.
Here's what Alan Lowry had to say about his role as the quarterback in the 1972.
Right now, it's been pretty slow for the first few days or 2 days, but I think it's going to come along pretty good.
Coach Royal has high hopes that you will end up as great as Street and Phillips and the fellas in the past. Make you feel good?
Well, yeah, it makes me feel good, but I really don't know if it's going to happen.
What do you need to work on most when you operate the wishbone?
Just mainly on the different options and where you have to get to before you can option these people, and the places that you have to be at a certain time.
There are some great athletes in addition to Lowry. Let's listen to just a few of them here.
You know, everybody's saying we don't have a proven quarterback, but he's proven himself to me, and I'm sure he's proven himself to the other players on the team.
How do you feel personally? You're in good shape, ready for a red-hot senior year?
Oh, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I don't know. I'm ready for a good year. I know that.
Okay. You did all right in that scrimmage the other day, Roosevelt. Does that make you feel good?
Yeah, it does. Really does.
How do you feel about running the fullback position in the wishbone? Is it a tough job?
Well, in a way it is, the blocking. That's the only thing really what's tough about it. Getting the blocks and everything down, that's it.
running then is a pleasure, blocking is work. I guess that's always the case in a running back, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Coach Royal talks about morale having a great deal to do with your success this year, with the lack of certain other elements that are needed. How do you feel about the morale of the team?
Well, it's been real good so far. You know, everyone knows that we're going to be in some games outmanned. You know, we're going to have to make up for it elsewhere. And everyone's working real hard during two-a-days, and everyone's real anxious to get started.
You Horn fans will be happy to know that Memorial Stadium has been completed. Some 77,000 rabid Horn rooters per game will crowd into the stadium this fall. The season begins September 23rd against Miami and then grinds on for 10 straight weeks. This is Jerry Haynes for Channel 8 Sports in Austin.
Well, it looked awful bad from a statistical standpoint. It wasn't that critical from actually an observation. We had a number of things that were happening to us in the game. For example, we had 4 or 5 tip passes, which you may not have 4 or 5 the whole season. And this nullifies, 3 or 4 protection plays. We seemed to have a little trouble standing up at times on the turf, although Kansas City seemed to do all right, but we slipped a whole lot, and it threw us off timing a great deal. Our overall timing is not particularly good at this point, but I think it'll come, and as I've said, we have excellent people working, and they'll see that it comes.
What's the cause when so many passes are batted down at the line of scrimmage?
Well, normally the linemen are required to what we call set and cut, to keep defensive linemen's hands down as we throw short. We're throwing basically into the flats pretty short on the play. We weren't making the blocks against this club. 2 reasons. One, our technique was not particularly good, and we were working against superior players who were seeing our cuts coming and were reacting to them. And you have to give Kansas City credit for that.
The Mustangs face a relative easy 4-game preseason schedule, so by the time they get into that first conference game, they could have the necessary experience to make themselves contenders. Coach Hayden Fry talks about his offense.
Going into the season, we feel that our offensive line is really going to have to improve, mainly because we only have 2 youngsters, Kelly Arnold and Tom Black, an offensive left tackle and offensive right guard, that have played in a varsity football game. We do have quality people at the positions at this time, but they need exposure and they need to win in order to build their confidence. We do not have a quarterback who's taken a varsity snap, so we're very concerned with this position. But once again, we have tremendous potential to work with. I think that Casey Ortez, Keith Bobo, and John Blackburn, and even Don Jarma possess the ability to develop into an outstanding quarterback.
Well, I have to lead the season optimistically. As you know, we're back to our wide-open offense, and the same thing Chuck Hickson ran when he was here, and this is what I came here to do, throw the ball, and we're going to throw 50% of the time and run 50% of the time. And I feel they also have to respect our running game, which they haven't been able to do in the past, because we have so many running backs this year, so that's going to open up our passing game a lot.
The running back situation is in great hands with Alvin Maxim. We have both of our top fullbacks returning from last year, and Dennis Howell and Rayford Clark. We have a young freshman who has looked exceptional in workouts by the name of Wayne Morris.
I think my decisions of whether to run inside or outside has improved, and my strength, I'm getting a little bit more strength in my running.
You think you'll need this to keep up your performance? Will they be pointing for you, do you think, having been a sophomore surprise last year?
I think I definitely need my strength and ability, because I think I'll be watched more this year.
Our defense is very similar to the offense in that we have the pluses and the minuses. The pluses being very strong linebacking with 4 senior linebackers and a youngster by the name of Ted Thompson, a true sophomore who has really looked fantastic in early fall drills. Our defensive secondary is a big plus factor. We have 3 of the 4 returning starters from last year in the secondary, and of course Robert Popelka is truly an All-American. He was second-team All-American last year, and he's the leader in our secondary.
Can you duplicate last year's season?
Well, I'm going to try. I hope I can, but you never can tell what happened. So,
are you happy with the way the defense is set up with Coach Phillips?
Yes, sir. I sure am. It's utilizing our personnel. We got big linemen, and we'll have them down. We got our whole secondary back, so it's a perfect defense for us.
How do you feel about this set of linebackers as compared with others that you've worked with here at SMU?
It's probably the best we've had because, well, we've got 5 seniors there, and then we have some young linebackers that are just doing real well for us. So, you know, everybody's a hard worker, and everybody's enthusiastic, and everybody has a lot of ability. I think, you know, we have a good set of linebackers.
So we start the season defensively, like we do offensively, a little bit nervous, but realizing that we have the potential to develop into an excellent defensive football team.
And that's the story from the hilltop. Tomorrow, a look at the Baylor Bears. This is Jerry Haynes on the Southwest Conference Football Tour for Channel 8 Sports.
Traditionally, the only thing studied is the financial figures presented by the utility, in this case Bell Telephone. We feel, however, that equally important is the ability of the consumers to pay for this rate hike. And so we have gone out and studied various aspects of consumers' ability to pay, as well as various phone company practices.
We figured that a very casual examination of only a portion of the budget indicated it could be cut at least $225,000.
We don't question the quality of these people. We do question the quality or the degree that we have raised their pay. We know of one specific example where the pay increases range from $24,000 to almost $29,000 in 1 year. This is a
$5,000 increase.
This is $5,000.
The change in tone of the public reaction over the past 2 years is just phenomenal, I think. The important thing is that the people that are still interested, in other words, the hue and cry has died to a certain extent. You can only sustain that pitch for a fairly short length of time. But the people that have stayed involved are better informed, better educated. They're working positively to get things done.